So I think the best place to start is obviously we are 11 days out from Election Day this morning. How are you feeling?
I feel great. I'm looking forward to getting back to Washington. I'm up here for the judiciary hearing today, and we'll be here over the weekend. But we'll spend the final days campaigning and going to victory on November 3rd.
Right. And speaking of the judiciary hearing this morning, there's obviously going to be the vote on Judge Coney Barrett. How are you feeling heading into that? Do you know how you're going to vote yet?
I do. I'm going to be voting to vote her out of committee, and then I'll be voting for confirmation on the floor. I think she did an extraordinary job last week, and I think the American people saw somebody that they think is eminently qualified to be an associate justice on the Supreme Court.
And of course, election night, like I said, a little more than 2 weeks away. Do you know where you're going to be yet?
Yeah, we'll be in the Charlotte area. We're trying to work out the location. It'll be a socially distanced, smaller crowd than we would normally see at a victory night, but we'll be with our friends and our supporters and my family.
All right, and so it is going to be an in-person event to some degree then.
It will be. We're trying to figure out what venue, how many people we can have, and make sure that all the appropriate social distancing is in place.
And it's been a whirlwind couple of weeks with your campaign. Of course, your opponent, Cal Cunningham, had a sex scandal. That news broke and has been what everyone's been following. Do you think the news of his affair is going to give you an edge heading into Election Day and as voters are casting their ballots right now in early voting?
Well, I think it's less about the affair, and I do feel bad for his wife and his teenage children. It's more about the fact that this has completely undermined Cal Cunningham's campaign of truth and honor. I mean, he had a relationship with the wife of a wounded warrior and he was in the same command at Fort Bragg. He's under investigation by the Department of the Army. And the best case is he gets a letter of reprimand. The worst case is he could be court-martialed. And I think that that's something that the voters have to really ask a question about anything Cal Cunningham said over the course of this campaign, whether they can believe it, knowing what we know now.
And of course, the race between the two of you is the most expensive U.S. Senate race in history. He spent nearly $2 million on social media ad. You spent, I think, close to $500,000. What do you think that says about the importance of this Senate race and the balance of power heading into the next term?
Well, I think Chuck Schumer has absolutely set North Carolina as a priority. He recruited Cal Cunningham. Chuck Schumer is responsible for over $85 million in the race. It is the most expensive race in U.S. history. Again, it was in 2014. I think that at the end of the day, voters just need to be informed. They need to know whether or not they want somebody who's cut taxes, built a great economy in North Carolina when I was Speaker, helped build a great economy up in the U.S. Senate, somebody who's worked on historic pay raises for military personnel. We completely transformed the VA. We've tried to get that message out, but you're right. With all the ads out there, I just hope people are taking the time to really understand the stark contrast and choices between me and Cal Cunningham.
And we learned last night, the FBI did a press conference that Russia and Iran have obtained voter registration data. What do you want North Carolina voters to know about the security of this election in the next couple of weeks?
Well, first and foremost, I think that they can be confident that the election systems themselves are secure because we've taken the time to make sure that we work with the boards of elections, the state and local boards of elections to secure the vote counting. But China, Russia, Iran, and other state actors are trying to influence the election. We've got evidence of the fact that they've done that on social media. They have to be held accountable. And I suspect that with the information that we've gotten from the FBI, that we will impose sanctions and hold those that we find responsible for meddling in our elections, that they've got to be held accountable. And I think individuals will be held accountable. Iran will be held accountable. Russia, we've already imposed probably more sanctions on Russia over the last 4 years than ever over any 4-year period. We've got to get them out of elections. They do it in Europe. They're doing it in the United States. And China, Russia, Iran, and any state actor has to be held accountable. And the U.S. has the might to do that.
Are you confident that we're going to know the results of your Senate race and some of these other races on election night, or do you think it's going to take a little bit longer?
Well, I think with the circuit court decision allowing absentee ballots to be counted 9 days after the election versus 3 days, there may be a few days before we certify the election, but I've got confidence in our absentee ballot process. That's why I'm voting by absentee. Um, but it may take a few days depending upon how close the race is on election night before it's ultimately called. And I think that that's true in other states, particularly the states that have done the mass mailing. You've seen the news reports of some ballots being thrown out. So that's going to take some time to sort out. I think the presidential election, if it's close, could also take a number of days or weeks before it's ultimately certified.
And what should people do in that meantime? I mean, we're so used to knowing those results on election night. What's the best advice you have for people?
Well, the best advice is to trust a centuries-old tradition of a peaceful transition of power. Um, my advice to the looters and the rioters that we've seen in many streets is to just stand down, let the democratic process work, and trust the wisdom of the electorate. I think in North Carolina, we will know sooner than most states. Many states will be called on election night, but now's the time for us to be calm and also respect our law enforcement and police officers who are doing a great job. We lost another one this week. We've lost 42 this year. And let's just make sure that we do our part to protect our communities and ensure our safety.
We're seeing some big spikes in the coronavirus here in North Carolina. Yesterday, Governor Cooper said that we're going to pause in phase 3. Do you think that we'll see a coronavirus relief bill before Election Day?
Well, I hope so. I voted for one a month ago. I'm prepared to vote for another one. I'm focused on how we spend the money. And so the top line number is important, but what's really important is how we spend the money. Are we getting it to businesses for paycheck protection? Are we extending unemployment? Are we sending stimulus checks to families who are struggling still? Are we providing money for education so that we can safely open the schools? On the point of pausing in phase 3, I would just ask the governor to think about a policy that allows any business that can comply with the CDC guidelines to open. I had COVID a couple of weeks ago. I was in quarantine for 10 days. I recovered, fully recovered, had virtually no symptoms. But that time in isolation convinced me that we have to look at people who are isolating now because they're afraid of getting the virus, and the number of suicides, drug overdoses, domestic violence, child abuse are up. So I think we need to come up with a policy that lets us safely open, always keep an eye on our hospital system capacity. But we have got to recognize that a vaccine's on the way, that we have therapeutics that are lessening the symptoms, and we have to figure out a way to get everybody to do their part by wearing masks and using hand sanitizer, washing their hands, and social distancing. But I really do believe now is the time for us to continue to find ways to open the economy and get people out of this isolated environment that we find ourselves in.
And of course, today, in addition to the vote today in the Senate, there is a presidential debate. What are your thoughts on that? What are you hoping to see this time as opposed to the last time we had an in-person debate?
Well, I hope that we really get to talk about the issues. I hope that the president is able to really outline a very successful track record, turning the economy around, holding NATO responsible, historic increases in military spending after 8 years with Joe Biden and the administration, reducing spending for the military, overseeing a VA that was failed. The Veterans Administration has transformed, reducing regulations, becoming an energy superpower. I think those are all very important things that President Trump can claim credit for, and I hope that comes out in the debate tonight. Joe Biden has promised to raise taxes. He's gone on the record saying he would end the United States position as an energy superpower. There's a stark contrast there, and I hope in the debate tonight that all that comes out.
And I know you've got a busy schedule today. Final question, just what do you want voters to know heading into these last 2 weeks? What are your plans of the campaign?
Well, I want voters to know that I grew up in a trailer park, and every time that I think about policy, I think about people who are struggling. I think about what can we do to provide the same opportunities that I got to live in a trailer park and become a partner at Price Waterhouse and ultimately a U.S. Senator. Every single policy that I focus on, or every single decision that I make is with an eye towards the people who are hurting the most. We have to provide better health care, but it has to be sustainable. It can't be an empty promise. It has to be a promise we can fulfill. And ever since I've been in the Senate and when I was in the State House, that's all that's driven me, and that's all that will drive me for as long as I'm an elected official.
All right. Thank you so much for your time, Senator. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you.